Welcome to another episode on my abuse series. Today I have Brianna Carter of BNC Original and freelance writer of the blog mamaknowsnada.com. Today she is here discussing mental, emotional abuse and also her struggle with anorexia and her success leaving that space. So welcome. Stay with me. Hello, everyone. This is Meredyth with a Y, and I am your host, Meredyth Willits. Today, we are going to go deep, changing lives, and I am giving you the keys to the castle. Welcome today to Brianna Carter. I want to give a trigger warning. Today, we are going to be discussing abuse, both all of physical, mental, emotional. We're also going to be discussing anorexia and eating disorders. So if this is not in line with something that you can listen to today, if it is not comfortable for you, please press stop now. Brianna, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story. I'm super excited to get into a completely new topic that we haven't discussed, which is eating disorders and all of this stuff. So welcome today.
Oh, thank you so much for thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here. I think it's all important topics that we should share as much as possible about.
Yeah, this has been, it's thick. It's thick and it's only going to get thicker as we move forward in these topics, but I think it's super important to discuss. And I've been so lucky to have such gracious and vulnerable guests like yourself, because basically, who you are today is not who you or your mom was years ago. It's taken you a while to get to this place. This is not the same person you both were and are. And so let's kind of rewind back into time.
Totally.
So that we can share with people how we got to today, because as with all lives, it's a journey. Everyone looks at us today and go, gosh, they're so put together. They've got it. They just know what's up. She's just so, oh my gosh. And it's like, no, this isn't what it's always looked like.
No, I think the thing we can't drive home enough at any stage in life is we're all just figuring it out day by day. So to kind of do a flashback, my parents divorced when I was younger. My mom had always been physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive. We used to joke as kids, if we came home from school and the furniture was rearranged, we weren't going to get beat that day. Which, in retrospect is kind of funny, but in the heat of the moment, it was like this huge relief when you walked into the house.
What do you think that was? What do you think that process was? Was it her releasing stress?
Yeah.
Stress,
anxiety. I think the other important factor to drive home it, to just kind of touch on here is, she came from a very abusive household. She was one of 6 kids, very Irish Catholic Italian family. The maternal matriarch was a very strong with the iron fist kind of person. As we're recording this, my grandmother, she's been dead about a year. I buried on my mom's birthday, actually. So there's a lot tied into that. And for me as a kid growing up, you just thought the problem was you, like, it was my fault. And then again, the Catholic guilt thing, you're taught that you don't defy mom and dad. You're taught to be obedient. You're taught all these things. And then, but you're just like, you're scared, you're scared of your caregivers. You're scared to speak out. And my dad was working at the time, anywhere from 2 to 3 jobs, anywhere from 80 to over 100 hours a week. So he wasn't present enough to know. And when daddy got there, it was like a break for everybody. Daddy could read the stories. He could kind of be the hero. Mommy wasn't going to lash out. She was given a little bit of reprieve that she also needed. And I think that's the interesting thing about, our moms, or like our parents in general, is that especially that generation, they were shown a way to be a parent and they didn't know how to do anything different from that. And so here you are, flash forwarding, to me. I have a almost 4-year-old son, and I knew exactly what I didn't want to be, but I didn't know how to get there. And I can circle back to that later. But I remember just being terrified. I remember, my just like a moment, like my mom got so upset because my brother wasn't crying. And so she beat him and she drug him across the floor by his ear. I think because he was the boy, he probably got the worst amount of it. Him and my sister, she had a mouthful on her from a young age and would sass back, which, standing up for herself, which is great. But that's not what we did in our household. And so I got to observe, and I actually remember a lot more of the physical trauma that they experienced than more so than they do, which is an interesting kind of psychological thing. We all have our ways to cope, our coping mechanisms. And I don't know if anybody like wants if I should get into any specifics, but there's time where we were locked out of the house, and my brother was locked out in a snowstorm because he didn't help with groceries. So all these things, and you're just wondering what did I do wrong as a kid? And then you just try to always please people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't ever, because at the end of the day, I wasn't the problem, her frustration and anger was taken out on me, but it wasn't because of me. It was because of a million other things that I can't even begin to project onto her. But I can, as a mom now, as a wife now, I could see she didn't have the tools to communicate what it was she needed. Therefore, we bore the brunt of that, an example of an emotional mental abuse when she got remarried. She told me, and I remember this so vividly. She's like, well, at least you had a good life up until now. I was like 9. Okay. like I knew anything else in my, suburban neighborhood. And, she's like, at least you had a good life until now. These girls have had it way worse than you. And I was like, what the hell does that even mean?
Your new
I'm like,
step siblings,
yeah.
the man she was marrying's kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had it worse than me. But as a 9-year-old, I didn't even know what that, why is my mom saying that to me? And what does that even mean? And I should be grateful. And I was like, okay, but what? That just, and the disassociation in my brain was very strong with some of the statements that she had made. So probably about the time I was 13, 14, going into high school, I started exercising more and eating less, and kind of trying to control my situation the only way I could, which was through food. And because the only thing I could control in all the chaos. And I think I lived in 6 different houses in 4 years, and all these inconsistencies was, was controlling my weight. It's the only thing that was within my wheelhouse of capability to define myself, and at first it was, I was never an overweight or obese kid. I was always active and dance, basketball, whatever. But once people started oh, you look like you lost a few pounds, you look really good. Then as a rising freshman going into 9th grade, and I weighed 95 pounds at 5'6", probably not the healthiest I could be. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but it was again, a coping mechanism, a defense mechanism. No matter what happens to me, I can still feel beautiful in the skin, and I can still control what I eat, and I can still make my body look the way I want it to, or the way I feel is best for me. And again, a lot of levels of, psychology in there. But yeah, that's kind of the little nuggeted version of how I got to
Right.
be anorexic. Yeah.
Well, when you were talking about the anorexia, because I had the same experience in high school where food became something that you can control, something that no one can take away from you. They're not and actually our parents' generation sees being thin as being very, very good.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's by way of the depression, their parents or what, but I know that I've heard a lot of women kind of in our generation talk about their parents, and being thin is very, very held high.
Mhm.
So no one's going to stop you from being thin.
Yeah.
No one's going to stop you from working out. It's in line with our parents' values. So it's very in line with something they want us to do, but it's still our little safe space. So,
Huh?
it's like you said, I would control my bedroom by keeping it immaculate so that there was nothing that anyone could say about it. So I
Mm-hmm.
was always managing what I could control, my
Mm-hmm.
cleanliness of my bedrooms, how organized my drawers were, because that was always a bone of contention in our house.
Uh-huh.
My family's Irish as well. And so, yeah, you see a little similarities. And so then, yeah, so I remember, going for miles and miles and miles of walks and doing, one workout tape after another and getting down to, I think I was 137 pounds, 5'9.5".
Mm.
And my gym teacher actually telling me that my BMI at that time was like just body fat percentage was like 14%, was too high. Right. Welcome to 1988, 1989. But yeah, I mean, it did definitely make you, when everything else was cloudy, that was shiny. When everything
Mhm.
else was unknown and uncontrollable, that was known and controllable. So it became like the anorexia, the weight, the food, the working out is an escape from everything negative, because
Uh-huh.
you're going for a workout, you're going to the gym, for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You're going for a 5-6 mile walk every single night with your friends, and your mom's not going to stop you because it's a positive in her eyes. You're losing
Yeah.
weight,
Yeah.
so it does make a lot of sense. But like, as you're saying about the weight and about the anorexia, that's just one way to
Hmm.
control and check out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when you are like what you're saying with, it's shiny and beautiful and all these things, it's easy for people to kind of label it as she's just taking care of her health. Well, um, but you also, and like you're saying, like the clean room couldn't have a point of contention. If I'm doing all these things right, there, I will not be hurt. I will not be impacted. I will not be this. I will not be that. And you creating a safe, and in your brain, a safe environment, and like working out excessively for me cleared my headspace. So I wasn't, because I was angry and had aggression. So it helped me get it out in a positive way. And so, but that's not everybody's experience. Like, my cousins, for example, a lot of them turned to drugs and alcohol, and that was their crutch to get through their experiences. And so these kind of coping mechanisms can manifest in very destructive ways. And as we can see with like anorexia, bulimia, that just a total, I mean, all your systems can malfunction if you maintain it and you keep going and you keep going with it. You will literally fall apart or wither away to nothing. Same like your liver could, explode or, disintegrate if you're drinking too much, or, you could put something up your nose the wrong way and there goes your brain. We unfortunately have seen this happen in our culture regularly. And so in a way, I guess it was like a quote unquote good thing that mine manifested in anorexia. I was always really scared to try drugs and didn't really start drinking until
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what that's going to do to me. And then
Plus, we would get in trouble. We didn't get in trouble
Exactly.
for being skinny. You're not going to get in trouble for going for a walk, or a run or not eating, but you're going to get in trouble if you come home drunk. Now it's a
Yeah.
double. You know what I
Yep.
mean? You might be checked out, but not for long, because they're going to pick you up and know.
You're going to feel that impact later.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was scared. Exactly. I was scared to try anything, as well as like on all the levels. But I think it's really important to point out that certain things manifest for the wrong ways. So losing weight and taking care of my body isn't necessarily a bad thing. It was the manner in which I did it and for how long that it was. Like, I think I counted calories well into my 20s. And your body needs more food than you think it does, but it has to be like the right foods. And I think taking the time and space to like clear my head and kind of realize why I was behaving in certain ways and the way it was impacting my overall health is was really important. And again, that took a lot of time. I have a much healthier relationship with food as a mid-30s person because I'm not living in fear. There's not a lot of trauma in my life. There's, of course, my husband and I aren't perfect all the time. I'm never going to pretend that. And my son gets on my nerves, and I probably snap at him more than I should from time to time. But, I always look back, okay, what am I not going to choose to be? How am I going to make sure that I'm doing the healthiest option, not just for myself, but for my family? And I think that when you're looking into things or when you're analyzing your life choices, or like, how many glasses of wine do you have? In certain countries, it's really not bad to have a couple glasses every day, but do you need that wine when you wake up? Are you craving that, like cigarettes, or do you need, THC for you to really unwind? Like, what is it that you're escaping by doing what you're doing? And if you can say that you're not escaping, but you have to be honest with yourself. That's the other tricky part, is that you have to be really willing to look in that mirror and say, oh shit, I probably am working out too much. I probably don't need 3 glasses of wine because it's helping me deal with my toddler. I need to figure out a better coping mechanism or a better way to engage with my lifestyle right now, so that because your kids watch everything too. So, so they will pick up on the things, So I think that's also really important. Like, and it's hard to find that balance that's right for you. But I think that you have to kind of look at yourself and be like, okay, where am I leaning too hard into something that might not be ideal for me long-term? What can I do to make it better?
Yeah.
Or what can I do to change that behavior? And that's kind of like where my healing journey started. So I think it's all tied together, from being abused to being anorexic to the healing thing. It's like, but the thing that I always come back to is you have to be willing to seek the truth about yourself and what you need as a human being.
Yeah. So when did you finally kind of look in the mirror and go, all right, this food working out thing is kind of getting wacky, or I don't need it anymore. I don't need to have this much control over my body.
So by the time I was in college, I had been to 3 different high schools. And by my last high school, so really started my anorexia when I was about 13, like in 8th grade. And so by the time I was a senior, I was in my 3rd high school, and I didn't have a lot of friends. And I thought I was really outgoing, and apparently I came off as snobby or something, which I found out later, which was bizarre to me. I was like, okay, I was a new girl, but all right. Anyway, that's a different topic for a different day.
Right.
And I was so like sad and depressed by being like an outcast that I couldn't really, my aspirations like change. Like, how do I fit in? How do I find friends? And for someone who was a people pleaser and always trying to do right, I didn't realize that me trying to be engaged and like friendly with people was actually putting them off. So I don't really know what I could have done differently at that point in time, but again, I internalized that. And so when I graduated high school and finally like went into college, I was just working 3 jobs and can't afford food. I'm taking 18 credits a semester. All of my energies were kind of accidentally redirected into more productive, positive, independent building activities that day by day, month by month, year by year, I started to lose focus on the calories and staying thin. And I just tried to stay healthy and have fun. And I will say that it took probably most of my 20s into like my late 20s to get to a place where I could feel good by eating and drinking whatever I wanted, but also working out to a healthy degree without jeopardizing what that impact was on my body long term, without like being hyper about calorie counts, but without being like hyper about working out, where I kind of could just be like, okay, well, I'm having a couple beers after work tonight. That's fine, because I worked a 16-hour shift on my feet at the bar,
Right.
like
Right.
having that balance, and it also allowing for fun in my life, and not necessarily living a regimented structure or by this like OCD kind of thing, because in a way, like that militant behavior of anorexia is very can be closely related to like an OCD kind of thing. Yeah. And so it's definitely a journey. And I would say by now in my mid 30s, I have kind of like, I'll look at things like, am I having too much sugar? Am I eating too many, pirate's booty or goldfish? Because those are processed foods. Probably, again, not the best thing to eat on a regular basis, but necessary when you have toddlers who are always hungry. And just kind of making sure that it's okay once in a while. It's okay a few times a week, but let's make sure what we're fueling our body with is more nutrient dense, more accessible, is it local, like, and kind of just like changing my relationship with food by being more informed, being more aware of myself, being more aware of my family, and what we all need as individual segments, as well as like the group entity.
Yeah. And when you're talking about like, kind of moving away, into college, you can see, just that energy of not being as nervous, not being as worried, not being, because I always look at, if you have these emotions that you are not allowed to, I'm sure you were not allowed to just go up to your mom and tell her, hey, kind of sick of you beating the shit out of us. Like it's getting old. Don't like the outbursts. And then you also have these situations at school. So you don't even have a solace there. And so you have all this weird energy at school. And I always look at addictions as stuffing your emotions down. So even though you weren't stuffing it down necessarily with food, you were stuffing it down, by way of this distraction of controlling what goes in your mouth, of how you spend your days, of working out. And my dad's always told me, be mindful if you have an addictive personality. Because a lot of times people that do, which addictive personality, doesn't that just mean traumatized? I mean, let's be honest, right?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
That just came to me in 1 second. So if you are a traumatized person for whatever reason, and then have turned to some sort of an addiction, unless you heal that trauma, by the way, this is all coming to me as we speak. If you don't heal that trauma, you will jump from one addiction to another. So it would go from food to working out to maybe too much wine or to smoking or whatever. For myself, it was like I was 16 and a cigarette became freedom, because I didn't smoke in front of my parents. So when I was smoking, I was free. I was, on lunch at school. It was in college. I was with my friends on vacation, whatever that looked like. Smoking was freedom. And it took until probably 2 years ago, I quit on and off my whole life. But it took until a couple of years ago to recognize that the promise of that cigarette, that promise of freedom, the promise of the distraction of anorexia, the promise of the distraction of oxy or whatever your drug of choice is, listeners, even if it's shopping or sex or whatever, that promise of that addiction to take away or distract you from your trauma eventually becomes a lie.
It does. And it's interesting that you bring that up. Before I went to college, I used to always like have like X-Lax tabs, like in my,
I was a no-dose girl. I was a no-dose. So I would be so buzzed up I didn't want to eat, and you're X-laxing. We all have our drug of choice, right?
Right. I remember, and this caused a huge controversy in my household. I was living with my dad at the time. Again, parents divorced, all big mess. And his wife, now ex-wife, was like snooping through my drawer and found these X-Lax tabs. And they're like, "Why, we thought you were over this." And I was like, "I am." But it's just like an alcoholic going into a bar, a recovered alcoholic. If you can go into a bar and you can sit and watch your friend drink, that's how you know you've cleared the steps, right? kind of a similar thing. I never was in AA or anything like that, but those principles of, have you really beaten the thing that you're struggling to, or that's breaking you down, or that's holding you back, or helping you cope with all these terrible emotions and all your trauma? Like, have you beat the trauma or have you not? And I'm sure there's still things that I still need to work on, but that symbol of having these, tabs accessible to me and not wanting them, not needing them, not utilizing them, was a big like sign that I had conquered this, at least part of my trauma, like I didn't need it to feel good or in control anymore. So it was a really interesting, come to Jesus moment, if you will. I was like, look at that. They're right there, dude. They've been here the whole time.
They've been here the whole time. And I wasn't searching for them like a mad woman, right? In the middle after eating something. So you were with your mom and you have a relationship now, clearly, as we started this whole thing with, but you didn't for a long time.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So how does that work? Because I know that there's people that take breaks or have a pause, or whatever. How did your pause when you finally said, I can't?
So it was like a couple step journey, I'll say. So when my mom got remarried to this stepdad, I had ended up going to live with my dad for like a year and a half. And then I kind of got lonely. I was at my first high school. All my friends, I was living in Baltimore at the time. All my friends were in Pennsylvania. Even though I had really good friends in Baltimore, I just felt like out of place, I guess, I don't know. It's like I didn't really belong and I couldn't really put my finger on it. And I think also part of that was I was used to being like on the go and moving houses so frequently that I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I should go somewhere. Right. That's again, a whole other like nomadic thing.
Right.
It's all layered in there. And so I moved back to Pennsylvania for about 6 months, finished out my sophomore year of high school there. My mom and I got into a fight. She hit me in the face and it was the first time I didn't cry. I just looked at her and I just like turned my head back at her like, okay, whatever. Called my boyfriend. He came to get me. My brother came to pick me up and I was back with my dad. So didn't really speak to her for my last 2 years of high school. Kind of reconnected in college. I would see her periodically. She worked close by to my university. It was in Towson University outside of Baltimore. And then I didn't want her to come to my college graduation because I didn't feel like she had any part of me achieving that, which she was not happy about, and understandably so. And so we didn't really talk for like the next, that was like I was 22 until I was in my late 20s. I moved to California, all this stuff. And I started going to therapy when I moved out there. Because my dad's ex-wife, my stepmom, she was a little bit of a control freak too. So she had some part in some of this at the latter end as well. But ended up moving to California kind of just to get away and have like a fresh start and not have anybody be telling me who I needed to be, where I needed to go, what I was capable of, what I should and shouldn't do. I was like, hey, I'm just gonna figure out this shit on my own because y'all don't have your shit figured out and you're trying to tell me how to adult. Like, stop. You can all stop. You can all stop.
100%.
And, it's always easier to tell someone else what to do than it is for you to go do it yourself. I'm sure we all have friends like that. You just need to, if you just, and you're like, no, like, stop.
Should.
Yeah. Right. So I put a whole continent in between us, for about 8 years. And I was fired from my job right after like my 29th birthday. Like the spring after. And I was like, oh shit, I don't know what to do now. I got all this freedom. So I was driving back to live with my dad in Key West. How terrible. And kind of figure out plan B. And I was driving through Texas and my mom lived at San Antonio at the time. And I was like, I'm just going to see what she's open for and how much of the truth she's willing to hear from me, like my experience.
Wow.
And we sat down for like 6 hours and had a lot of beer. And I just went through like all the things. And I was just like, I don't know why. And basically at the end of it, I was like, I don't know why you had to hand us your bag of shit, because it wasn't mine. Like, it wasn't your trauma, and your struggles with your parents weren't mine to hold. And we didn't need to be the outlet for your insecurities and your trauma and all the other things that I'm not going to project onto her, because I don't know all the stuff. But and after that, it was just like little by little, I was living in a different state. And
so when you had that conversation, I don't want to interrupt, but I also don't want to lose this moment. When you are sitting in, I'm assuming, her house in San Antonio?
We're at a bar in Austin.
Okay. So okay, cool.
Neutral ground.
Okay. So she meets you at this bar in Austin. You guys sit down for 6 hours, and she's uncomfortable. She's allowing, she's listening, she's apologizing. What is she doing when you're kind of letting this all out?
Like receptive and accepting.
Really?
She took it all in. I'm sure there's things that she doesn't agree with, or doesn't, think, doesn't remember happened, or doesn't, but we all internalized things differently. Like, someone's intention is different than my perception, right? So my intention with her was to just tell her all the ways that I had felt pain, and all the ways that I didn't feel like that pain was mine to hold. For me to feel like I could move forward as a human being and give her the chance to show that she had changed. And because she actually listened, and
huge.
It was huge,
huge.
She showed that she had growth, that she was, even if she wasn't where she wanted to be or needed to be for me to be in a relationship with her, she still was onto something, that she was showing me she wasn't the same person she was, the 10 years before, the 20 years before. And I thought that was a promising note, and the other thing that I kind of came to terms with through a lot of therapy was that she didn't know how to be anything other than what she was shown. She didn't realize she had choices. She didn't realize there was different ways of doing stuff. She didn't realize there's this whole world of options out there to explore about how to parent, different methods, different styles, different psychological breakdowns of what kids need, how to engage with kids, all that kind of stuff. There wasn't just, it's not one dimensional, right? There's different ways to be a good parent, and kids need different things. And so just
yelling, spanking, control, yelling, rinse, repeat. You know what I mean? It's like the church 101, like just bring down the Catholic iron fist and teach your kids into submission, to be seen and not heard. Don't talk back. Like all of that stuff, squash, squash, squish, squish, just keep everything tight. I mean, that's 101. I remember my mom telling me that, because that was in the 70s. I was born in 72. I'm the oldest. And my mom telling me about like the Dr. Spock came out, and she was like, I'm not listening to that crap. And I'm like, why? Please, why didn't you? Just anything would have been fantastic. Like,
anything.
Like I just anything but that kind of old school, lead with an iron fist kind of concept, my way or the highway, mother knows best. Right. So I hate to, sorry to interrupt, but it's just my brain is like catching on to all these, like there are and were other options. We have tons now. I mean, now we can't get out of a self-help situation. Like if it's not a podcast or a social media meme, right? It's a book or a TV show or whatever. So there's obviously, and now we know better. We're knowing better. We're doing better. I don't hit my kids. And I tell people all the time, like, stop beating your children, for the love of God, like get a book. But there were Get something.
Something. A punching bag.
Yeah, like know that if that much anger is in you and that is your only way to control your children, you're a shitty parent.
Yeah, you are the problem.
You
Not
may
the
be the
kid.
problem. And so you might want to look into that a little bit. And it's always, the people that are like, they do fit into a box. And I hate to say that, but they do. It's, but it goes back to, they're still in line with that.
Mhm.
Beat the hell out of your kids. Mother knows best. You need to be under my control at all times. And, and no expression from children. I don't need to know your expression of self. But these books are not new. I mean, Dr. Spock, these things were out there in the 70s. They did have some things that they could have, tapped into. It wasn't as maybe available.
Yeah.
They are a product of their parents. And the fact that your mom sat there and did not deny. I mean, I just give her so much credit to just sit there and hold that space of allowing you, whether it was her truth or not, it was your truth. And the fact that she was willing to, I know this is going to sound great, but to take it. She had to take it. You were handing it over. You're like, here, I'm giving this back. I'm giving 20, 30 years of junk back to you that I no longer am going to carry. And now you can carry it. Because I was 9, PS. I was 9 years old, right? I was 12. And I see, like you're saying, there was such a huge opening for you to be able to say, holy crap, she's open to this. She wants to hear me now. And I think if it's that 6-hour, I'm sure, extremely gut-wrenching conversation from her end. It had to be so painful, because even if my kids like say anything I do bad as a mom, it's so painful. It is. I don't like hearing that I'm not a great mom. I don't like hearing that they hate the food that I make. I don't like hearing that I was late to pick them up when they were in 3rd grade and I screwed up. Like, I don't want to hear it either. But if more parents were open to being in pain for 6 hours, you can get to 2.0. You can get to the next chapter, but I don't think you can get to the next chapter when you're still holding 30 years of pain and she's still pushing it back on you.
Yeah, you can't, you can't, if no one's willing to make a change. And I couldn't, at the time, before that moment, I couldn't have said my piece in a productive manner. It would have been very accusatory and very harsh. And I tried not to be harsh. I tried just to be straightforward and honest. Like there was definitely a part of me for a long time who just wanted to make her feel what I had felt over all those years. But at a certain time, like, I had to be the bigger person, and just say, this is why I haven't really wanted to speak to you. I don't like the way I was treated. I don't think it was fair. I don't think it was right. I don't think it was productive. I'm a person too. And I know you might not have meant to hurt me, but you really, really did. And I just wasn't sure that I could be in a relationship or look at that woman as my mother anymore. And that's a hard thing to hear because, especially when you give birth to your child, it's like, oh, you can't imagine them ever turning around their backs on you or not appreciating you as mom and dad or whomever you are as a couple or partnership. And so I can imagine how tough that was on her. And I'm just like, to just be able to like get rid of it, even if she doesn't want to pick it, but she doesn't have to pick it back up. I don't want her to do that because that's a whole other level of guilt and stuff too. But just to like let her know what my perception of all the chaos was and how I needed her to be a mom to me, not a mom to my stepsisters, and like that kind of thing. Like, you guys divorced, my whole life was uprooted. There was a lot just in that section. Divorce can be a very traumatic thing, especially when it's not, nice and evenly sliced, if you will. And theirs was not a pretty divorce. So, and then you'd layer in all these different things and, you know, move all the stuff, all the moves, all the this, all the that. And it's like, this wasn't what was best for me. And all I can do now as an adult, and what I realized was like, I can choose to let it impact me. I can choose to let it control me and bring me down. I can choose to let it, you know, kind of bend my thinking, or I can try to get past it, get through it, leave it where it is, 20 years in the past, and try anew for myself, for my mom, with my mom, I should say. And, you know, with my family now, because I didn't want to be a mom. I was petrified of being a mom because I was afraid that all these things were ingrained in our DNA. It's a book called Bad Genes. I've only skimmed it because it's a little beyond me. And it talks about like genetic codes and like how, you know, is there such a thing called like bad genes out there, and you just get them, right? And as much as I think that genetics, and there's a lot of things, like I look at my son and I can see all this stuff, I think that if you're given the opportunity and you really want to, if you really want to, you can change a pattern. You can change a cycle. You can choose another option. And for me, I think I've hit my son on the butt once.
Yeah. I mean, we all have that one, like, have you lost your, but I mean,
I know, like, who are you, child? What is this deep? And my son's brilliant. He is such a good kid. Like, I feel bad. Like, but when there's like, you know, that 1 or 2 moments where I'm like, I don't know what spawn of Satan you just came from in this moment, but that is not okay.
Yeah.
I think I slapped his hand one time because he kept slapping me in the face. And I was like, Declan, stop.
Right.
And I immediately telling myself, like, I immediately go to my husband and I'm like,
I just say this. Right.
And he's like, okay, well, what's the, you know, and like, but how do you get better? You know, like, how do you choose to be better? Like, and I think that's the most important thing, is raising a kid with intention, you know, letting my son be who he is, as long as he's not harming himself or someone else, listening to him, telling him, I do not know, I think is a really good thing, as
apologizing
when you're wrong. I apologize to my son probably 10 times a day. Sorry. And I do raise my voice at him sometimes. And I have started to say, Declan, if you don't listen, mommy needs to use her loud voice, because I need you to understand our behavior and our actions need to change, not in 20 minutes, right now.
Right.
This morning I was like, I don't have time for tears, kid. Let's put your shoes on. You know, like, I want you to feel your feels. I want you to be a responsible young child and young man with, you know, emotional empathy and emotional intelligence. But right now, I ain't got time for your tears. Like,
however, comma, get the shoes on. We got to go. I love. And so, like, as we're talking about like all this parenting stuff, and I know that you have your Mama Knows Nada blog. Is that like, are you discussing these types of things on your blog? I mean, what is it about, all of this stuff?
Yeah, so I do a lot of vignette style writing, if you will, very like scenario driven, situational, and I pull from a lot of different things. I do discuss a lot about how I didn't want to be a mom, and about how, you know, that's not every woman's dream, how I didn't want to get married, like, and how I struggle with that, like how I struggle with my life because it's not what I envisioned for myself. And I know that sounds like really bizarre to hear, but I think that we have to remember, not all women are created the same way. And not all women want the house in the suburbs with the kid and the dog and the husband, and, you know, and like, and it's like, I have that. And I'm like, oh God, this is not where I thought I would be in my 30s. Like,
and you have to like use what you wanted, use what you have. And then like, how do I work all of that together? How do I kind of knit all of that together so I don't wake up one day and like disappear.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I think that if you aren't true to yourself, how can you be true to the people that you love? And that's just something I found helpful on my journey personally. And I have always been honesty and integrity above all things, and to a fault. My husband would tell me all the time, You don't need to say that.
I don't need to know that about you, right? I don't need to know you're miserable today.
Right. This what, and I'll wake up cranky, and he'll be like, I'll be like, sorry, babe, I'm gonna be really snippy until I have my coffee and this kid goes to preschool because I just can't right now. And he's like, walking away from you, lady.
Yeah. But you know what? Like, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about my own journey. And so my son turned 25 yesterday, my oldest. Right. So that means I have been mom for 25 years, and I have a 10-year-old.
That's a lot.
So that's a lot of mom, right? So we're talking like almost 4 decades when they graduate, at least, right? Yeah. So 4 decades of giving, you know, and as I moved into probably the last, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years, I've really started to understand, and this is going to come full circle to our mothers and ourselves, that I had to start listening to myself, or I would resent being a mom. I was able to fake it, not really, but I was able to give tirelessly for 20 years.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Stay at home, laundry. I mean, in between podcast recordings, I'm downstairs doing laundry and putting away stuff literally today. Like, that's all I do. Like, all I did yesterday was laundry and podcast recordings and appointments and whatever. And so for 20 years, I gave, 21 probably, tirelessly. Yeah. Unabashed, like nothing for self, like never went on girls' weekends, never. And then my oldest daughter, who's 22, she's like, let's go on vacation together. Fun. And so we started traveling together, and I started like more of my own business. And I started to give back to myself because I knew I couldn't give tirelessly and not live on this earth without living my dreams, without being angry and resentful and waking up one day and disappearing. Yep. I knew that I could not continue to ignore who I was as a person. So to be the best wife, to be the best mother, I needed to travel to India. I needed to travel to Bali. I needed to start a podcast. Yep. I needed to start being Meredyth. Yep. So that when my kids walk in at the end of the day, I'm fulfilled. I'm excited to be their mom. I feel like I'm giving back to the earth, because guess what? I'm, 48 years old. I'm getting into that place, even though I had these last 2 kids older. I'm moving into that phase of life where I want to give back. Where it's not about just being a mom. It's not about just being a career woman. It's giving back to the world, and it's giving. So all of these steps have to transpire and take place inside of motherhood for women.
And I think that if anybody, to each their own, because we all have our ways of getting through things. Some people just want to be moms. They love managing a household, and that's their jam. And if that's how you're fulfilled, great, more power to you. But I think we lie to ourselves by assuming that that white picket fence dream is A, attainable, and B, realistic. I remember my sister got pregnant with her first, and he's 15 now. I said to her, she was like early 20s, and it was a mess. I said, you need to figure out your head before you try to raise a child. And I always knew that if I wasn't taken care of first, you can only be good to someone else you can only be as good to someone else as you're willing to be to yourself. Correct. And if you're not willing to be good to yourself and take time out and say, I need that, I'm going to go do this. It's not selfish. Being an individual, you were a person before you had a kid, before you had a partner. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, I want to go be an individual without you. Yeah. 90% of my life is an individual with you, but there's some parts of my life, like, nobody questions my husband's work and what he does.
No, they just go to 4 days in Vegas, 3 days in Atlanta. I mean, when I went to my trip, in India, I mean, that's a long flight, and so we stayed for like 10 days. We traveled all over the country, my daughter and myself. It wasn't like I was there like snorting lines of coke. We were like doing the whole we were checking out India, right? We were eating noodles. And I remember like one of my best girlfriends was like, I cannot believe you're leaving for that long. And I felt like saying, you've been a mom for 10 years. talk to me when they're 25.
Yeah. Yep.
Talk to me. You've been doing this for a hot minute. Like,
Yeah.
I have put my career, I put my entire life, I put everything on hold.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to sit here and drown myself in 30 gallons of rosé. Like, you know what I mean? But like, it's okay. And we're so seen as being selfish for
Mm-hmm.
doing the girls' weekend, for going to get your toes
Mm-hmm.
done, for going into a spa day. It's seen as indulgent.
Yeah.
Why in the world is it seen as, I mean, to me, Mother's Day is leaving your kids and spending a day at the spa away from your children, like
Right.
maybe having a cup of coffee with them and then I'm out. But it's so interesting the way that we put women in these boxes, but men are allowed to go on guys' weekends. They're allowed to have careers. They're allowed to work 120 hours a week because they're providers and that's their part in the household. But we're just supposed to be completely happy and fulfilled by making macaroni and cheese and helping with math.
No. Well, I'm not really good at either of those things.
You know what I mean? And it's just, right. And it's just like, God, I have dreams too, and maybe, and you know what, maybe our moms had dreams and the society told them, no, you're going to raise kids. You're going to be happy doing laundry. There's nothing else for you. I mean, in our parents' generation, they were allowed to be teachers, nurses. That's it. Teacher or nurse. I remember my mom went to her school counselor and they were like, okay, are you going to be a teacher or a nurse? And she's like, I'm going to college. Not those things needed nursing too, but I mean, college too. But she's like, no, I wanted to be, and she became a journalist. But my thing is like, who knows how much that box that our mothers were in created the explosions that we saw, or that we felt from them, or they didn't feel like they were able to, dye their hair pink or wear pink lipstick or wear a bustier or all of these things that kept that generation inside of a box. Whereas now we can wear tank tops and sports bras and, fun dresses and go out dancing and, like maybe that was still in them. I mean, I'm not giving excuses.
Totally.
I'm just kind of like walking through this with you as we're inside of this space.
What was acceptable at the time, what they had access to, what was deemed appropriate, like there's a lot of things that I say and do that I know my mom would never have done.
Right.
Moving across the country. Like my mom didn't do that till she was in like her 50s. And, I was 22, peace out guys. I'll see you later.
Right.
It's just like the things that you thought that you could accomplish. I do think that was a lot of that,
Huge.
Especially coming from like a small town. My parents were from a very small town in Pennsylvania. So very limited. What you did was get married and have babies. That's what you did. You didn't go to college. You didn't do anything. So I think what we do get stuck sometimes about, sure, women have had rights, we'll like earn the vote to, right to vote, all this stuff, but we've only had them for so long.
I mean, my mom couldn't get a credit card when she got married. It had to be in her husband's name. She was not allowed to get a credit card, my mom. And I'm sure your mom the same way. Like that means you're not allowed to spend money.
Right. And you can't buy property. Like in a lot of states, I think it wasn't until like the 70s that you could actually buy property, land.
Take a loan. Yeah. Or do any of that. Like
you can do anything without your husband's. So that's only 50 years ago, 50, 60 years ago, where these things we were allowed to do them. And even when that's being said, we all know that just because a rule changes doesn't mean everybody follows it right away.
Right.
So there's a mental block that it does take time. People don't like change. So allowing women to be independent individuals was probably not on her, for my mom, or probably for yours, not on the table for them. It was this or that. And I couldn't imagine being that restricted as a human being, Yeah.
And watching your male counterpart do whatever they want to do. My dad went to law school and he's, got the car and he's doing this and that. And she's, raising kids. And it's probably, my mom is a very free spirit. She's so bright. And so, I mean, she's just an amazing person to be that. I mean, we're very, very similar in our expression and our love of and zest. And to be like looking and your options being not much that had to, right. It had to be very, but thank the Lord that our mothers are able to see and be and experience what we're experiencing right now, where they are allowed to be expressive and they are allowed to kind of, explode, if you will, in who they are. And we are now too. Like, as we are knowing better, we are doing better. And I think that, that's why I love this series so much, because I'm hitting on, we're hitting everything from narcissism today, anorexia, physical abuse by spouses, sexual abuse, trafficking. We're going to be talking about in this series, sex trafficking. So we're going to be, it's crazy. Trafficked by her own adoptive father. So we're going to be hitting a lot of really heavy topics in this series. It's very intense. I feel like I need to go lay down after this conversation. It's a lot to walk through. I'm sure you as well. I see your deep breaths. It's a lot.
Yoga.
But I think that that's why it's so important to have these conversations. So if there are women out there that are our generation, I'm older than you, but still, that are going through this, to know that there is a 2.0, to know that there is another side, to know that, like, maybe we should have a little pause for our moms, to know that we can have these, maybe hopefully have these conversations. If there's a mom out there that was abusive to their daughter and is listening to this, call your daughter and say, you know what, let's talk about this so we can stop pretending that it didn't happen. Sit there for 6 hours and listen to your adult grown daughter tell you, you know what, I didn't like having my hair pulled. I didn't like getting my ass beat. I didn't like being nervous every day I came home from school. That wasn't fun growing up walking on eggshells. It was awful. It was awful. And if you're out there as a mom, it's going to be 6 hours of hell, but you're going to get to the other side and have a completely different relationship, because you cannot have an honest relationship sitting on top of a lie.
No, there's always going to be a boundary up. And if you wonder if your kids have a boundary up on you, then maybe you need to revisit some of the experiences you've put them through or subjected them to, or whatever it is. And just to comment on, a little bit more on, what women should and shouldn't be doing. We're not meant to keep our children forever. I think there's a misconception that we own our children. They are an extension of us. They are part of our lives. But for the women who who might be fogged down and afraid to explore those feelings of, like, I don't feel fulfilled, it's just a mom, you're supposed to grow your child into the most socially acceptable version of a human being that you can. And as we can see, society changes regularly. So just keep them empathetic and kind. And I think that's a good start. There's my 2 cents that you didn't want. But you're not supposed to keep them forever. So you still need to be you and be a mom. It's just a facet of who you are. It's not the whole kit and caboodle. It's not the whole diamond. Diamonds have facets. Motherhood is one of them. And I think that it is a hard marriage of personalities, because you change so drastically as a mom. When you become a mom, it's instantaneous. I just feel like it is. And that it's hard to be those two individuals together. But if you want to have, like, a successful, like, individual relationship with yourself, then I think you got to look at things from all sides. And motherhood is just a facet. It's not everything. And it's okay to take a break and reset yourself. And you might need it more than you think, especially if you've had any kind of trauma. Like, you being around your kid all the time because your parents neglected you doesn't mean you're a better parent than them. It means that you're doing it differently.
And don't find your worth or lack of worth inside of that. A working mom is not a lesser mom.
No.
And we just love the labels. We love compartmentalizing. We love leveling all the moms up and down and all that stuff. Like, the fact of the matter is all of our parents did the best that they could, or they would have done different. And we're doing the best that we can. I'm sure that my kids have plenty to say about everything from the food I make to how much attention I pay to them and how much I'm on my phone and all this. trust me, I'm sure they can comb through quite the filter of mom's not the best, but I'm doing my best. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
doing my best to be my own independent person, my own member of society, create
Yep.
them as being their members of society. And we're all, doing our best and sharing our experience so that we can do better every day. That's the
Do better
goal.
together. Like that is the goal. I think that's spot on. We know better, so we're going to do better. We remember how it feels to be traumatized. So why are we going to put our kids through that? And we should tell people what that is like. You might not even realize like you're emotionally abusing your child by like putting them down every time they say something. Or my biggest thing is like when kids are counting calories so long, that like from such a young age, like I've heard that numerous times, and I'm like, that strikes a chord with me personally, obviously, but also like, oh, they're beautiful just the way they are, let's like build our people up to have confidence in themselves and stop thinking about how they're not adequate enough, or they're not smart enough, beautiful enough, intelligent enough, outgoing enough.
Ego.
Let's just let them be kids and like,
yeah,
let them be the beautiful little human that we created. Like, certain things I just don't understand.
Yeah, no, I know. And so if anyone wants to find you, they can go to Mama Knows Nada, N-A-D-A, not mamaknowsnada.com. That's where they're going to find your blog.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have all of this in the show notes, but what is your Instagram, or do you have any social that they can find you at?
Yeah, I do most, you can go to facebook.com/mamaknowsnada. Or you can go to Instagram at mama.knows.nada. And I post a lot. It's kind of like a personal / like professional page. I try to keep it, real.
Yeah.
An honest view into my life. I try to like tie blogs into there. I just finished one about all the different types. There's a lot of types of preschools out there. Did you know that? It's crazy.
No.
It's like overwhelming. And I try to like, have facts or something, like the months coming up, we all know breast cancer awareness and like ovarian cancers in September. And like, I'm a freelance writer, and so I do a lot of stuff with like volunteers and volunteering charities with differently abled individuals. So kind of highlighting those things. And my book's connected to that, positivelypenelope.com. It's about a girl in a wheelchair who wants to race. So if you're looking for something for your kids, that's always a cool thing to check out. I'm really proud of that.
I didn't know about that. I didn't have that in my
notes. That's my bad, not yours.
Oh, that's such a great, I love that. Positively Penelope. And where can we find that book?
It's available on Amazon. I'm actually revamping my site to have it be sold from there. But yeah, Amazon,
Of
there
course.
You go, Bezos.
I know, right? Just giving him some more money.
I know,
giving him more money. Well, I so appreciate you being here and sharing your story and kind of breaking it all down, like between the two of us. It's been very cathartic. I'm like, oh, like I just released 20 years of crap too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know. We're both gonna need a cigarette and a martini after this, right?
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being here so much and sharing and talking about your struggles and triumphs and getting where we're at. And I love the idea of, that was me then and this is us now, and really being able to compartmentalize that, to be able to share your story, but not attach yourself to that energy, not attach yourself to, I'm not that person anymore. And that's okay. And it's okay that I had that story and I see myself that way. I did a lot of dumb shit when I was in my 20s that I don't even it's not even me, but it wasn't, but holy crap. And so I think we have to allow people to grow, and we have to allow people to leave our past in the past when we have done the things to move from that. So thank you so much for being here. Everyone, I hope you stay tuned for the rest of this podcast series. It's going to be amazing, but thanks so much, Brianna. I appreciate you being here.
I'm so happy to be part of it. And I think it's so important, again, that we share our perspectives to kind of keep us, we're all one big woman community. So let's share our brilliance and, our pitfalls too, so that we can all move forward together.
I love it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you would like to connect on a more personal level, head over to meredythwillits.com or on Instagram at Meredyth with a Y. for behind-the-scene footage and outtakes. Please subscribe and come back each week for more Meredyth with a Y. Thanks again for listening. Cheers.